So I did a brief intro, so I'll start with a question. Full form of NLP, but it's right there. Okay, so the topic for today is NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming, for enhancing communication in Agile teams. So I hope to learn a lot about communications and Agile teams here. Our speaker for this session is Toby. He's founding organizer of LAN and is very active in Agile community. I'm sure many of you know him. Toby is an Agile leader with a strong interest in human dynamics, organizational development, and a talent development. These interests drove him to learn about neuro-linguistic programming and earn a diploma in NLP. He has put together this presentation for us using his hands-on Agile leadership, training, coaching experience, along with his NLP skills, tools, techniques, and best practices. I am very curious to learn about NLP and how it can be applied in an Agile role. I'm sure you are too. Let's welcome Toby.
Thank you, Anju, and thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for taking the time on this Thursday evening to spend at Loudoun Agile Network. So a little about Loudoun Agile Network. We are about to finish our 1 year. We started in January, and it's been going great. And thank you for everybody for supporting us through this journey. It's exciting, and we have great speakers lined up all through till February, March next year. So really excited. And it's my first presentation in LAN. So I'm very excited to be able to present in LAN, which was a dream for a very long time. And many of you know that. So with that, let's jump into the topic, right? Neuro Linguistic Programming for enhancing communication in Agile teams. So it is no secret, right? The importance of communication, especially in today's organizations where everything is moving so fast, cannot be overstated. I think before COVID, communication was important. After COVID, it's become even more important. Most of the time, our face-to-face communication has been replaced by Zoom meetings, texts, emails, more than face-to-face. And for Agile teams, right, for those of you who are long-time Agilists, we always believed that conversations need to be face-to-face. It's always better. And we were quick as a community, as a global Agile community, we were quick to change that to, okay, Zoom works, Teams works, whatever, WebEx works. But then the importance of communication cannot be understated. It's so important. Yet, what happens is a lot of miscommunication, misunderstandings, and misinformation happens in all organizations. So the question is, why does that happen? We all know that communication is important. We pay a lot of importance to communication. I mean, every proposal that I have read or written, there is a section on communication. Every interview we take, we we discuss the communication style of the individual we're trying to hire. So we all know that communication is important. Yet, in spite of trying hard, we miss information. Why does that happen? I think the answer is that our brains it's hardware, right? And the software is set in a certain way that we process information in a certain manner. And our reactions and things that we do is based on what our brain captures or how the brain captures that information. And that is the topic for today. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this topic. I think Anju covered it really well. So I've been around the block for a few years. I've been in the Agile community for a long time. I was very curious to learn about human dynamics, just a personal interest. And those of you who know me, I've always been very interested in the people side of leadership. And that led me to learn a little more about how does communication work, the organizational change management, what is the human side of change. That led me to learn more about NLP, and I took a course and learned a lot of things. And then I kind of synthesized that information to see how that can work with Agile teams. And that's the presentation today. So we're going to talk about communication, the importance of it, why we fail. I'm going to give a quick introduction to what NLP is. I know it's a scary three-letter word, but we're going to talk about that, or sorry, three words, scary three words. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But our focus today is to talk about NLP's communication model. There is a whole lot more to NLP than just communication model. Our focus is communication model. And then we're going to talk about Agile teams. And then I'm going to share some insights and tips on how you can implement some of these tools, techniques, best practices in your teams. Okay. And then we're going to hopefully open it up for question and answers. All right. So with that, let's jump to the main topic. Why is communication important? I heard this long time ago. I don't know, in a movie or somewhere, saying that, my words came out fine. Your brain did not register it, right? Your brain processed it incorrectly. I don't know where I have no recollection of where I saw this. But it's so true, right? Message sent is not equal to message received. More so when we are communicating with brief four words, 3 words in text. Brevity has killed communication even more. People don't understand when you say full sentences. And now even worse, we communicate by emojis, right? I mean, imagine somebody says something and you reply with an emoji. I've done it so many times by mistake. Instead of smiley face, I've sent a sad face. And then I said, oh, no, I'm sorry. I meant happy face. So communication has changed over the last so many years, especially the last few years. Now, the problem is most of the workplace challenges, the lack of trust or the dilution of trust, the lack of engagement that is happening, and a lot of frustration comes from the different silos, the communication styles that people are using today. So historical data, if you look at it, right, it proves that miscommunication has led to broken relationships, both on a personal level, organizational level, country level, has led to downfall of Fortune 500 companies, and even has caused wars, right? 96% of our communication, it used to be 70%, it's got upgraded to 96% of our communication comes from non-verbal feedback, right? And companies that are, pay attention to communication and communicate effectively with their teams, their turnovers are 50% less than the others. They say that about $37 billion is lost per year because of miscommunications. I mean, those are big numbers. And 57% of projects fail because of communication. And that's a big number. 57% is a huge number. So I think there is definitely a case for looking into how can we improve communication. But the fact remains that communication is hard. right? Talking is easy. I can say what I want, but that doesn't mean that what I say is registering in your brain and you're understanding what I'm saying. I mean, you've heard this before. If you're listening partially so that you can get your answer or response ready, that's a problem. You should be listening deep to understand what I'm saying, right? You've heard that so many times, right? In different presentations. And I'm not going to repeat that. I'm not going to go deep into that. But the problem is not that. Even what you understood, you probably did not understand fully. And your brain is going to take an image out of what was said and is going to process that. And then that's going to come out of your system. And if that is not the right thing, it's going to be problems. So this is where NLP comes in. But before we go into NLP, let's kind of dissect how communication happens between just two individuals, right? Just take a simple example, two individuals, and see how that works, and so that we can get a better understanding of that. Is that okay? All right, so let's jump into that. So this is information flow. So most humans think in concepts. We think in emotions, we think in senses, we think in feelings, and we rely on memories for a lot of things. It's very abstract level. We don't think in words directly. We first think in other ways, which I just talked about. And those get converted to words. Now this happens inside your head. So your thoughts, whatever your thoughts are, they convert into words. And I've experienced that. I never thought about this till I started learning about NLP, but it's very true. I have a vivid memory that will come into my head, then it will turn into words, then it may be something that I'll speak to my wife about, or write about, or tweet about, or whatever I communicate. But it starts with something else. And then you convey those words, both through verbal and non-verbal communication. So whoever you're speaking to, they receive the words, what you just said. Now, I said earlier, message sent is not equal to message received. So you might have said something, they might have understood something else. Now, once those words are received by the other person, it goes into the head, and then they have to kind of analyze that, right? So it goes into a thought process, and those words become thoughts. And then once they think through it, then they kind of understand the concept. But not everything is understood, right? Because there are so many things that could go wrong in this whole process, right? You could be thinking about something, but the words that come out of your mouth could be different. Maybe you said the right words, but maybe they didn't understand those right words. So a lot could go wrong here. And this is where NLP comes in. So at this point, I'm sure you're curious about, okay, this guy keeps talking about NLP. What is NLP? All right, guys, let's just jump into that. So what is NLP? So NLP stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. It is not natural language processing. If you are Googling NLP right now, you're probably getting mixed reactions from the internet. You're getting some hits on Neuro Linguistic Programming, and you're getting some hits on natural language processing. That's important too, but we're focused on this today, okay? All right, so what is it? So it is really just ideas, tools, and techniques that can help you become a better communicator, and motivate others. And I know it's a very high level abstract, but I'm going to talk about it in the rest of the slides. So I read somewhere, I was reading a book, and it said, this is the brain owner's manual. So think of your brain as hardware and NLP as the software for it. So you could actually train your brain to act and think in a certain way. It's amazing. It's also technology. Since we use the word programming, it's also technology for your own personal development. I mean, we talk about it all the time, and you must have heard it in other leadership presentations that any transformation that you're trying to do starts with you. You have to do personal transformation first before you try to transform others. I mean, it's like being in the plane, right? When the air pressure goes down, the face mask drop from the air, you're supposed to put it on you first before you put it on other people or kids or dependents, whatever it is. But it starts with you. So does NLP. It starts with you. Now, it's a science for modeling. Now, this is a little out of scope for today's discussion, but I learned some amazing skills about modeling behaviors of successful people or people that you idolize. The powers of NLP has really changed my life. And I would love to talk to you guys another time, but I'm not going to talk about science of modeling today. It's just maybe a whole deep topic by itself. And it's the art of communication. All right, with that, let's move to a little bit of history. And I'm going to not spend a whole lot of time here. I'm seeing that the time is 7:21. So I'm going to jump through some of this theoretical stuff and jump to the fun stuff. So it started in the 1970s by two gentlemen by the name of Richard Bandler and John Grinder. Both of them are living legends in the world of NLP. Both of them are here today, and they are training a lot of people, and they lead this whole realm of NLP. Now, their work, their curiosity was based on a lot of psycho research that they were doing, and the work of three particular people, Fritz, Virginia, and Milton. Now, those of you who are in the Agile realm, especially transformation, you must have seen the work of Virginia Satir. It's called the Satir model. And I think I've talked about it so many times before. So they've done some really incredible work in the area of psychotherapy. So Richard Bandler and John Grinder took that work and kind of simplified it, but they put it more into the communication realm more than psychotherapy. I mean, imagine if this was called psychotherapy. I mean, nobody would even want to go there or read it. So what is NLP then, right? We talked a little bit about it. So the brain is that whole system related to your brain is called neuro or neuroscience. And linguistic is the language, or, the brain by itself gets inputs and it has outputs. So what language does it understand? By language, I don't mean Italian and German. It's what kind of information does your brain process, and how does that affect the way you do things? That's about linguistic. And programming is the way our human bodies are programmed based on our beliefs, based on so many other things, our culture, our past experiences, the way we behave based on what our brain tells us. So a study of that whole thing together is called NLP. Today, we're going to focus on Nlp Communication Model, which really is focused on how the human brain internalizes and processes information and drives our behaviors. Okay. So I touched upon this. Neuro is all about the brain, and it's all about the other components that are attached to the brain. please don't worry, I'm not going to show you a picture of a real brain or talk about the different parts, but it's the five senses and your brain which really controls the whole body. Linguistic is about language, is how we communicate. And programming it comes with an operating system. The good news is that NLP teaches you how to kind of reprogram your brain to do certain things. And once you go through this course and read some books, you'll watch some movies and say, wow, yeah, that, I can see how that's happening. And it's really true. It can be done by reprogramming your brain to do things a certain way. So I was watching Criminal Minds, reruns of Criminal Minds a couple of weeks ago. And I watched some of the things that I'd seen before, and looking at the way FBI interrogates people, or when they hear certain things, how they pick up certain cues out of that, I could see strong relevance to NLP there. It was really bizarre, but very true. I mean, a lot of our leaders are NLP trained. I'm given to understand that Barack Obama was also NLP trained. And so this is making its way to a lot of different organizations and realms of life. And why leave Agile out of it? And that's why I wanted to study a little more and see how we can bring that in here. So with that, let's jump into Nlp Communication Model. So I'm sorry, this is a pretty busy picture here. So what is the Nlp Communication Model? It's a model that explains how human brains process the information that comes from outside us and what we do with it inside our heads. So I talked about Bandler and Grinder. When they started learning about NLP, it really started with a way to understand and communicate better. And it started with a model that studied how we communicate and interact with ourselves first. Interact with ourselves first and others. So now, the NLP communication model is based on a lot of things, and I'm going to walk you through the map in a minute. But it has a bunch of scripts and factors that come into play. And some of the things that come to mind is, values and beliefs. What are our values? As human beings, as we grow up, depending on the culture, depending on the family, depending on where you work, we gain certain values and we develop certain beliefs. So the information that comes into your head, it has to go through your value and belief system first. Your attitude towards events and situations. If there is a huge event that is happening or an event that happens in your life, the way you have behaved, or you've seen your parents behave, or you've seen your peers and leaders behave, a lot of times we tend to catch those things and we're going to behave the same way. Another thing that comes to mind is decisions we've previously made that impact the way we process our information. So if we made the decisions before and they were successful, the next time the same situation arises, I'm more likely to make the same decision. I know it sounds weird, but it's true. We try to economize our brain a lot. We're going to talk about that. So we tend to economize our brain. We don't want to overwork our brain. So a lot of times we'll just, we have some stored procedures in our head. We just got to use those stored procedures. We don't want to use too much muscle there. So NLP is NLP Communication Model is about that. So let's walk through this model. So an external event happens, right? So let's take an example. I mean, this is a group of Agilists, everybody's from IT. Let's say a huge production bug just gets uncovered. And your client calls and says, hey, many of our users cannot access the system. They're getting this error message. So that's what happens. So somebody calls from the client office to your office, and maybe a program manager or program director picks that up. And then in their head, that information now is like, and they have a lot of information here. So that goes through that. And then the program manager thinks about this inside his own head. And based on information he already has, beliefs he already has, he could generalize it, distort it, delete it. So if the client called and said, a lot of people are affected by this, and depending on so many different things, we talk about value, beliefs, decision, memories. He could now go and tell the whole team, guys, the whole system is down. Nobody can use the system. That could cause a panic, right, between the whole program team. Now, why would he have done that, right? I mean, that's his internal representation, his state of mind, his physiology. So what is internal representation? Maybe the last time it was a big deal, but he didn't think it was a big deal and he underplayed it, and it ended up being a big problem. So now his brain is telling him, no, don't underplay it. It could be the state of affairs. Maybe their particular program is coming up for a rebid and he doesn't want to take any chance. And maybe it's his physiology, right? Something is happening in his surroundings. Maybe there's a lot of pressure. I don't know. So many things could happen. And then that simple information that a lot of people cannot use the system now can have catastrophic effects based on how he reacts to that. So that's just an example. So let's now understand, what are these filters? What are some of these other things? And what can we do to ensure that information received is processed properly by our human brains? Does it make sense? Okay, so let's jump at it. So the way human beings process information happens through 3 different ways. The way we process information is images, sounds, and feelings. So images are visual. Sounds is what is called auditory, right? And by touching, feeling, that part of how we understand things is called kinesthetic. So it's important to understand the person who's giving you the message, also for you to work with stakeholders, with team members, to really understand, how does a person process information? Now, not everybody processes information the same way. If you pay attention to the words people use to share information or to communicate, you can get a good understanding of what is that person's preferred style, or what kind of sensory information that he or she is sending to you. So you might have heard things like, from a visual perspective, looks like we can do it. Oh, this appears to be a good plan. Oh, that was a light bulb moment for me. Auditory, you hear clients and people say, I hear you, man. I know we can do it. Hey, that sounds good. You might have heard things like, we don't know enough, let's play by ear. And then there's a third where, they're more kinesthetic. They like more touchy-feely. And they will say, yeah, that feels good. Let's get a handle on that. So how does this help? This helps you to understand, what is the communication style of that person and what is their sensory imaging that's happening in their head. So this is important, and we're going to talk more about it. So this is just a few more bullets on the same thing we talked about, which is the WAC model, or visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Interestingly, about 40% people are visual. Do you know people who, when you start talking to them, they can't talk without a dry erase board, a whiteboard without scribbling something and drawing something? Do you know people like that? I know tons of people who are like that. You start talking to them on the hallway, they'll walk you into some guy's room who's not there, and then they'll start scribbling stuff on the wall. They're visual people. They can explain better by drawing. They can understand better by drawing. They focus a lot more on the visual aspects of things, whatever is seen. And then there are auditory people. People who might be using other techniques or other representational systems, but they focus a lot on words. They want to make sure they hear you. They don't like any communication by emails or text. Definitely not emojis. They want to hear the words. So they'll pick up the phone. I don't understand anything you're saying. Let me call you. So there are people like that. They trust what is heard and said. And then there's kinesthetic. They actually want to do it. And interestingly, that's about 30 to 40% of people. So different people encode and decode information in different ways. It's all about how you process the information. So now from Stanford Medicine, Dr. Lu Chen wrote a few years ago. I'm going to share these slides, and most of my slides have links to it. And I did a good amount of research on this stuff. So Dr. Lu says that we don't know much about the brain. We know how it's connected, but we don't know how the information is processed. I mean, that's a huge thing for somebody who is a neurobiologist at Stanford Medicine. And this is a published paper. And this picture shows that, there are like hundreds or thousands of different things that can act with that. So let's jump forward to a couple of things that we saw in the communication model. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this slide because I think this applies a lot to Agile folks. So what happens is a lot of information that we hear gets either deleted, distorted, or generalized. So you're not getting the whole pure picture, right? What the person is telling you may not be the whole picture. It's just part of it. It's like watching a brand new, excellently shot movie in 720p. Yeah, you can still see the image, but a lot of that clarity is lost. That whole, the movie might have been shot in 4K, but you're watching it in 720p. Your TV in your basement from, I don't know, Thanksgiving 10 years ago. You're not going to see the whole picture. And if you just have two speakers, you're probably missing the whole sound effect of it as well. So you're not getting the whole experience. And that's because information gets deleted, it gets distorted, and it gets generalized. So now, these are three very basic concepts, very foundational concepts of NLP that which we should talk about. So let's talk about deletion. So our human brain can only hold so much information, right? We don't have a USB slot where we can add more memory, right? What's it? Now we have USB thumb drives with 256 GBs. I wish there was a place where I could, add a USB drive here. We don't. We have limited capacity. So our brain automatically deletes some information. I don't know how much time we have, but let's play a quick game, very, very quick. Please help me with this. So wherever you're sitting right now, look around the room and find anything which is red in color. Real quick, just look around your room. Look for things which are red in color or have the color red in it. Got it? Okay. Now, please close your eyes. Trust me, please close your eyes. And now recollect anything that you saw in the room which is blue in color. Do you recollect anything that you saw which is blue in color? Probably not, because the instructions I gave you, the words I gave you, the way your brain processed that information, you only registered the red. You deleted all the blue. And this is what happens in real life too. We delete the information we think is not important. We leave that out. The next is distortion. Distortion is where we take some information, but we use other things in our head to kind of mess with that, and it doesn't register the way it was intended to be. So for example, somebody might say, I don't think my boss likes me. Okay. And you could ask, why do you think your boss doesn't like you? Oh, he never talks to me. My boss doesn't talk to me, therefore he doesn't like me. So that's distortion. I mean, it could be true, but it's highly likely that it's distortion. And then there's generalization, right? This is a huge part of things we do. So what is generalization? So generalization is where our past experiences are, we could have some universal quantification in our head. Oh, the DevOps team never, ever does things on time. Jacob, he's always late to meetings. He might have been late to meeting twice, but your brain now generalizes and says, always late to meetings. So let's talk about this real quick. So deletion occurs when we filter out stuff because we have limited, it's economy of your mind or your brain. Distortion is where you have a bias and that filters out stuff. And generalization is we globalize things based on a couple of experiences. Well, there's always a huge line at Costco. Not true. It's not always a huge line at Costco. Yeah, sometimes it could be. Maybe the 2 times you went there, it was a long line, but it's not always. So all these things happen because of filters. I mean, what kind of filters do you have? So think about that for a minute. What kind of filters do you have? I'm going to say something very simple. And you guys try to fill in the blanks yourself. Dash is something I can never do because of dash. Dash is something I can never do because of dash. So I don't want to share it. Just think about that in your mind. So these are limitations that we put off on ourselves. Now, I could say I could never eat sushi because it's raw fish. Somebody could say, I would never climb a tall building because I'm afraid of heights. So your brain is preconditioned to say a few things. Those are the filters that you apply. Now, you must have seen these so many times, right? So I'll let you quickly read through this and think about, what kind of filters, what kind of distortion, deletion, generalization is happening in these things that you hear. Jira sucks. I've heard people say that. Jira sucks. Okay, what part of Jira sucks? Does all of Jira suck? Does a particular query suck? Does all of Jira suck? Everything is on track. You heard that. You hear that till 2 days before it goes to production, and then everything goes haywire after that. But till then, everybody is believing that everything is on track. It's not. I've heard people say extreme things like users are clueless. They don't know what button to press. Well, maybe you didn't develop the software the right way, and therefore they don't know what buttons they need to press. Okay, so let's jump into reading I accessing cues. This is a little extra. I was not originally planning to put this here, but we have 14 minutes left. Okay. So this is very important. So think about a conversation you've had with a person. Think about interviews that you see on news. The way your eyeballs move in your head can say a lot about what's happening inside your head. If you see people, if you see people who are like their eyeballs have gone all the way left, when they're answering a question, they're visually reconstructing something. Either it's like they're really reconstructing or they're lying. If their eyes are towards the center, right in the middle, they are reevaluating through sound. If they're looking down, they are kinesthetic. They're trying to feel that moment to see what's happening there. Now, if their eyeballs move towards the right-hand side and go towards the top, they're visually recalling some images that are already set in their brain. I wish we had more time so I could actually do a demo of this. It's really interesting. And then, so that's visual recall. And then if their eyeballs are in the center and towards this way, they're doing an auditory recall. Okay, what did that sound like? The day, the airplanes hit the buildings in New York City, if you had to recall that, if you close your eyes and you have to reconstruct that image in your head, you'll get a visual recall. Close your eyes for a second and try to get that picture in your head. Go ahead, do that. Close your eyes and try to recall whatever you saw it in social media, other things. What is your visual recall? And if you can look at a mirror That's even better. Or somebody else can look at you. Your eyes will actually, if you're doing a visual recall, they'll go this way. If you're doing an auditory recall, it's going to this way. And then if you are talking to your inner critic, you are probably going, your eyes are going to go this way, right? And the same episode, right? You're going to get a visual recall, you get an auditory recall. And if you happen to be in that place, some of this visual or auditory is even stronger. And whatever happened, the impact it had on you is going to show up. So this is a very important technique. Definitely can be used when you're interviewing people, you're talking to your stakeholders, you're about to go in for a negotiation. It's important to when you have this science behind you, you can understand the person better. So I've shared with you all quite a few techniques, talked about some deletion, distortion, generalization, talked a little bit about your sensory ways in which your brain processes information. There's a lot of information there. So let's talk about how could you gain from using NLP. And I realize that today is more a teaser, a little bit of introduction, and just talking about the communication model. I'm happy to connect with you and share more information. Please reach out to me. I'm really very passionate about this topic. But NLP can help you in a lot of ways in stronger relationships. If you are able to understand how to listen for the right cues, the right words, the people that you want stronger relationship with, what is their mode of understanding things or communicating, so that you can start working or talking in the same way. There is a whole lot of information about rapport building. How do you build rapport with other people? You can improve your team performance. And I'm going to talk about that in a couple of examples. Better engagement with your stakeholders. I feel so much more confident, right? After having learned NLP techniques, when I'm talking to my clients, I'm able to understand them so much better. Difficult people, there are no difficult people. It's just if you know how to understand them. Definitely better negotiation capabilities. If you are negotiating something with someone, and if you're talking to them, you can see how their facial expressions are, where their eyes are, the way they're saying things. Or if you do research beforehand, or if you know that person beforehand, you know that you are going to mirroring is a technique, you're going to mirror that person's way of doing things, so that there is better connection, better trust that is built between those people involved. So so many of those things happen. And in my case, for sure, I think I've become a better coach because I've learned some of these techniques. So with that, let's jump. We have just about 6 to 7 minutes left. Let's talk about communication in Agile teams. So we learned about what is Neuro Linguistic Programming. We learned some basic concepts about the background and history of NLP. We learned a little bit about the Nlp Communication Model. How does that work with Agile teams? That's a big question I had when I did my course, and my course was towards an International Coaching Federation ACC certification. I was the only Agile or technology person in the class. Everybody else was either a life coach or a health coach or executive coach. I was the only person there. And every class, because there was nobody I could really relate to, the question that keep coming back in my head is, okay, how does it relate to Agile teams? And I spent a lot of time thinking about it. So the next 5 minutes, I'm going to talk about that. So this is the manifesto. Hopefully, most of you have seen this before. I will not read this slide, but I'll give maybe a quick second for you guys to read through that and see if that makes sense. And all this information that I've put in here, all this is from me. It's not copy pasted from some site somewhere. So, individual interactions over process and tools. NLP helps with the basic format, the basic essence of interactions, which is communication and collaboration, right? Working software doesn't happen in a vacuum. It doesn't just happen, right? It's not an espresso machine where you put in the coffee machine and you press a button, software comes out, right? It comes from human beings, and human beings need communication. And NLP helps improving that transparency, that communication. Customer collaboration, right? Absolutely over contract negotiation. How does NLP help there? If you are able to understand your customer and their needs better, it's really beneficial. And I talked about this earlier. Change yourself first before you try to change others. All right, so let's see this in action. I have two people who fearlessly volunteered to help with this. My partner in crime, Nash, and this beautiful lady, Lakshmi, who are going to play out a role play for a couple of minutes. So with that, Lakshmi and Nash, on to you.
All right, we are here.
All right, so this is something that's going to demonstrate NLP in action. Please pay attention to the conversation which is about to take place and see for yourself what NLP techniques are you seeing in action. Are you seeing distortion, deletion, and generalization? And if the people who are going to be playing this are doing the right role. So one is a Scrum Master that is being played by Lakshmi, and Nash is a team member who's representing the team, but is coming back, in the afternoon to report something to Lakshmi. All right, guys, take it away.
Great, thanks, Toby. Do we have the slide?
You have it in your phone.
Okay. All right. Nash, whenever you're ready.
Nash is ready. Lakshmi, go ahead.
All right, great. Team, we have, so this is from the team coming up. We have a huge problem. So I am waiting for Nash to speak up, Toby, because that's the team representation.
He's on mute. He might be out. I can do it. So you're Scrum Master?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm representing the team. Hey, Lakshmi, we have a huge problem. We will not be able to demo the feature tomorrow to our stakeholders.
In the stand-up this morning, I heard this, everything is on track. What is stopping you from demoing it tomorrow?
The feature will not be ready.
Can you please elaborate what remains to be done?
Well, code is developed, unit tested, peer reviewed, and integration tested, but it can't be deployed to the demo environment. Oh.
I see. So the issue is only with the deploying.
Yes, it's always like this with the DevOps guys, always.
Always?
Well, not always, but last 2 sprints, Lakshmi.
What changed in the last 2 sprints?
You know, Martha went on maternity leave and they're shorthanded.
Okay, did you tell the DevOps lead or team in advance?
No, we did not.
Okay, so what should we do now?
All right, we are back. So that was a quick demo of a conversation that was scripted. So did you guys notice any instances where information was not shared properly? And if Lakshmi, the Scrum Master, asked the right questions to understand that? So please think about it. If you were the team member and you had to present this information that we will not be able to demo, how would you present that information to the Scrum Master? Or you could think about, if you were the Scrum Master, could you ask better questions to get to the bottom much earlier? So that was the whole point of this exercise, is that a lot is left untold unless you pull that information out. So the good news is that you could use NLP with Agile Teams, right? To build better relationship by asking the right questions, using EQ, rapport building, improve clarity. NLP has proven itself to be really good from a recruitment perspective. When you interview people, using NLP techniques really help. And your own personal transformation. I'm not going to go more. I think I talked a lot about it. Emotional intelligence, the work of Daniel Goleman has really come into play with NLP, really effective. Now, from an organizational transformation perspective, NLP is very important too, right? You can develop your team culture, help coach your own teams, and improve outcomes. So here are 3 books that I recommend. I'll be sharing these slides, so please do look for these. Vikram Dhar is my mentor and coach. Steve Andreas's wife, and who is Connie Ray. Connie Ray and Steve were partners, one of the original pioneers of NLP. All these 3 books are really awesome. If you want to start with one, I would say start with this one. And there are some links that I'm going to share with you guys as well. And these are my mentors and coaches I definitely wanted to share. I learned so much from them. It's a journey that I've just started. There's so much more to learn. And I'm happy to share what I know with all of you. With that, I would like to request Anju to please come and help us close.
Sure, Toby. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions that we want to take, or we are way over time?
I know we are over time. I'm sorry. I'm so passionate about this topic. I think I overspoke, but I can stay back if anybody has questions, or if anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn or reach out to me. I'm happy to support and help you.
So, yeah, Toby, we have a question from Jesse. Which book did you say to read first?
So I would say this one here, coaching with NLP for Dummies. If you're, depending on what you're doing, right? If you're a coach, start with this. If you want to learn in general about NLP, go with this book. That's more into the theory. It's very storybook format. If you've read the book, The Goal, it's kind of like that. It goes through like a story format. But yeah, I mean, all 3 books are good. If you're a coach, go with this. If you are a team member or an executive, then go with this. This encompasses everything. But a couple of these links that I have should give you a lot of information as well. So I can, I cannot copy. Okay. I'll send out the links out to everybody.
So there's no questions in the chat window except all good things about the speaker, and they want to really connect to you via LinkedIn. So that's all good, Toby. But if anyone has any questions, please raise your hand or we will unmute you. For security reasons, we have to mute everyone. But let us know if you need to talk, we'll unmute you. All right. Okay, let's see, there is one.
We still have 27 people.
Samira raised the hand. So I think you're on unmute.
Hi,
There
Samira.
we go. Thank you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. First of all, this is a phenomenal session. I appreciate that you're running over time. So with respect to your availability, you initially mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, and if I didn't mishear, potential or so alignment or different path between NLP and psychotherapy. Can you touch on that just a little bit more in the interest of your time, please?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So Samira, when Bandler and Grinder started their work in the 70s, there was a lot of research being done in the psychotherapy area.
Mm-hmm.
And based on the videos I've seen, based on the books I've read, they were not very convinced with the results that were coming out of the psychotherapy kind of realm or field of work. So they took it and put it more on the practical side. So it evolved. It started from the psychotherapy world, but it evolved more because they were more focused on communication. And in fact, the early studies that were done by these folks, by these pioneers, was based on a simple question: why are some people more successful than others given the same environment, the same situation, access to the same resources? What is the reason that some people are more successful than others? That's what prompted them to learn and dive deep into this area. And psychotherapy was one of those areas where they dug deep to get more information. So as it evolved, it kind of segregated itself from the realm, but it started from there. Samira, does that answer your question?
It does. It starts to touch on it, and I look forward to connecting with you and discussing this further. Thank you.
I would love
if
to.
I may, just a follow up to that, please.
Yes.
Did this lead and does this have a crossover, if you wish, into the organizational psychology realm?
It does. So I cannot give you specific examples where it has been implemented across a whole organization, but a lot of US government agencies are using this. A lot of agile coaches, a lot of executive coaches are definitely looking into this aspect of understanding how the human brain functions and how it processes information. There is so much still to be learned about it. So to answer your question, yes, I might be able to give you more specifics, maybe in a one-on-one conversation. Yes, it is definitely making its way into organizational behavior, organizational psychology. I mean, if you think of organizations, there is a concept that organizations also are and behave like as organisms. They have moods, they have their phases. They start with infancy, they grow, and they grow into, towards the tomb, right? And during the whole life of an organization, it goes through different phases. So there is a lot of relevance on these topics. Not everything is uncovered yet. And that's what makes it so interesting. So I would love to talk to you more about this, Samira.
100%. Thank you very much for your time and for the follow-up information. Greatly appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Do we have any